Hey everyone, it's Emily with Spiceworks. Thanks for tuning in today and joining us on another Spiceworks Partner webinar. All the benefits of Dropbox, none of the privacy and security concerns. Brought to you by Connected Data. Before we get started, I do want to remind everyone this webinar is being recorded. If you have to step away for any reason, you will get an email with a link to the video in about a week. Also, there's a Q&A box on your screen to the left. I encourage you to submit your questions at any time during the presentation. We'll get to those questions at the end via verbal Q&A. But if your question isn't addressed live, somebody from Connected Data will be able to follow up with you. So now I'd like to introduce our presenter, Russ Johnson, Connected Data COO and VP of Sales. So Russ, whenever you're ready, take it away.
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everybody. Thanks for making a little time in your day to spend with us and talk about Transporter and how we can provide you a private cloud experience for your users. Connected Data creates a secure and private alternative to Dropbox using your infrastructure. And to kind of set the stage for that, let's talk a little bit about what's happening with the public cloud these days. This slide shows some headlines and some news clippings, if you will. Over the last 18 to 24 months, we've really become painfully aware of the fact that the public cloud service providers aren't quite as secure as we originally thought. So these are actual news clippings. You can search the web and find them, such as Dropbox is peeking at your files. Certainly everybody's heard about Edward Snowden and the government being able to look at anything they want, and who knows what happens there. And the lack of security in general about the public cloud. So companies are becoming increasingly concerned about their confidential data being out on the public cloud, and they want a way to be able to provide the Dropbox-like services to their employees without the concerns of privacy and confidentiality that exist in the public cloud. This study was done by Osterman Research and shows that in companies of over 1,000 employees, more than 43% of those employees are actually using public cloud services, even against IT or corporate wishes. In fact, Sky High Networks did another study, and they interviewed the IT directors of organizations, and they asked them, how many of your employees are using public cloud storage or services? And then they went and interviewed the employees and asked the employees, are you using any public cloud storage and services? And the number of employees that are using public cloud services exceeded the IT department's estimate by between 10 and 12x. So 10 to 12 times more employees are using public cloud services and storage than what the IT department predicted. That's an astounding stat. So how it happens is you've got your remote workers and they need to VPN in to get behind the firewall. And then they get to their primary storage, which is organized and set up by somebody else. So it really doesn't make sense to them, and they have a hard time finding the files that they need. VPN login itself can be a little bit cumbersome and even a little flaky depending on the internet connection. So it's something that they don't really like to do. So once they get the folder and file, once they've actually found it, they like to just copy it up onto Dropbox. So that way they know they can get it on their mobile device, they can easily access it at Starbucks or wherever they might be. But once it's up at Dropbox, you don't know what happens. You don't know if they've shared it beyond that. You don't know if somebody else is peeking at it or somebody else has gotten into the system. So really, IT departments are losing control by the cumbersome VPN and traditional storage access methodologies that employees are trying to avoid. And employees aren't trying to be malicious. They just found a new and easier way to do their work, and they want to use that method instead of the old traditional way. So what are businesses doing about it? The donut on the bottom left is really the compelling element on this particular slide. 80% of businesses have an active policy to block public cloud storage services. So they're blocking the ports. But prohibition isn't going to work. All the employees need to do is jump on the guest wireless, which is usually open to everything out in the internet. Or they just pop onto their mobile devices and create a link that way and get access to the folders and files they need on the public cloud storage services. And at the same time, the public cloud storage services know the companies are trying to block their access, so they're opening new ports all the time so that employees can get access to their services. So it's a real problem, and IT departments are struggling to find out how to provide the Dropbox-like experience to employees while at the same time maintaining control and confidentiality of their data. This study actually is really interesting as well. It comes from Enterprise Strategy Group that interviewed companies that have already signed up for the enterprise or business versions of cloud services such as Box or Dropbox. So these companies have already signed up for their business class services. Yet 97% of those companies want to bring it back in-house. So they want to get out of the public cloud and provide the similar type services but keep the data in-house. The reason they want to do that is because they want flexibility and control over where the data is stored. They want to know exactly where is our data and who has the ability to look at it and what have they been doing with it. The ability to leverage existing on-premises infrastructure investments. So companies already have rack space, power, cooling, network connectivity, internet connectivity. They don't want to be paying somebody else 10x profit in order to be able to perform the same functions that they can do on their own. And they can do it in a more secure manner. So that brings us to Transporter. Transporter is a fully integrated appliance that includes all the software, hardware, storage, and compute power necessary to provide a Dropbox-like experience to your users while at the same time maintaining control of the confidentiality and the locality of the data. So we provide a mobile data infrastructure that provides mobile access to folders and files on your on-prem data, enterprise file sync and share, global replication capabilities. We extend the existing file servers and NAS systems, and we do it in a non-disruptive manner to current systems and processes. So it's not a rip and replace, it's a bolt-on addition to your current infrastructure. We have much higher capacity and performance than public cloud storage and dramatically less expensive than public cloud storage. And it's 100% private. Let's look at how it works, how we extend the existing storage infrastructure. So in the middle of this graphic, you've got 3 2U rack mount servers that are the blue rectangles that represent the transporters. Transporters are chosen based on the number of users or the capacity requirements that you might have. The content on the transporters are made available externally to mobile users outside the firewall via a proprietary AES 256-bit encrypted tunnel. So instead of using cumbersome VPNs, the transporter app on the mobile device creates a tunneled peer-to-peer network between that device and the authorized folders on the transporter to create an easy, seamless method of access. It's a Dropbox-like environment. To the right of the transporters on this graphic, you see the green arrow, which represents the bidirectional synchronization between the transporter and the primary storage. By connecting the transporter by pointing it to a standard sys share on any primary storage, we can do bidirectional synchronization, replicate the data off of the primary storage onto the transporter, and then making that available out to the mobile users on the left of the firewall there. Any changes that those users make on the mobile devices get replicated all the way back through to the primary storage. And any changes that the users that are on the LAN that might be accessing the primary storage through the traditional shared drive, those changes also get replicated back out to the mobile users, as well as changes from the mobile users get replicated and seen almost immediately to the users that are accessing the folders and files from the shared drive in the traditional manner on the LAN. So you have the ability to provide enterprise file sync and share, mobile device access in a simple connectivity manner to all of your users, as well as maintaining your traditional routines and requirements that you had previously with respect to backup, auditing access, all those routines that you've already got built into your infrastructure on your primary storage remain intact. Here's an example of a deployment of the transporter product. Corporate HQ, off to the right of the slide, represented again with a couple of transporters represented by the 2U rack mount servers. That's in the corporate HQ headquarters, and again, the number of transporters is dependent on the number of users or the capacity requirements. And then the bidirectional synchronization represented by the black arrow between the transporter and the primary storage. The transporter can work independently on its own, but we find that a lot of customers like to use our network storage connector and assign it to a particular folder or group of folders on your primary storage and make those available externally to the mobile users, which are represented on the top left-hand part of this slide. The mobile users have a simple access to the folders and files, so they're able to gain access to what they need in a very simple manner. They use it exactly the same way they would popular public cloud storage services, where they can find folders and files easily. They can send links. They can access it on their mobile devices and add folders if they need to, and those folders that they add would be synchronized all the way back through to the primary storage. One big advantage the transporter brings to the market is the branch office that you see on the bottom left-hand corner there of this slide, which represents a branch office. Maybe let's say it's less than 100 users, and you want a very light IT footprint with some plug-and-play kind of a model to deploy a transporter and provide those users with local access to folders and files. That way they don't have to VPN tunnel all the way back into the HQ. They don't have to have multiple hits sucking up bandwidth up and down the internet to public cloud storage. They get access to folders and files at LAN rate speeds. Any changes or modifications they make are automatically and persistently synchronized back over to corporate HQ. While at the same time, any changes to those folders and files made to the corporate HQ are also automatically and synchronized back over to the branch office. So it's a very secure, very efficient method of being able to provide global access to folders and files around your organization. Partners and clients represented on the top right-hand corner of this slide can also get access to folders and files. We have a theoretical unlimited number of guest users that you can add to the transporter. A guest user has limited rights and restrictions with respect to what they can do with folders and files. One of those, importantly, is they cannot share beyond that level. So if you invite a guest user in, they have the opportunity to have access to folders and files in the selected area that you've given them rights to. So they can collaborate and you can work together on projects, but they cannot share that folder beyond that particular level. So they can't share it out with anyone else. Partners and clients don't have to have a transporter. They can access it just like they would with popular public storage or public cloud storage services. But if they happen to have a transporter on site, then again the files are available at local LAN rate speeds. So it increases performance, and that's really handy when it comes to heavy content or large file sizes such as CAD or graphics files and marketing collaboration. So here's how the network attached the storage connector works as a brief overview. The square represents the firewall. Inside the firewall, and ideally on the same LAN as your primary storage, you've got the transporter. You connect the transporter to your LAN and then point it with a login and a pointer capability that we have a simple interface for to the desired folder or folders on your primary storage. And then that data gets replicated onto the transporter and bidirectionally syncs any changes that occur on your primary storage and or the transporter, and makes that data available outside the firewall, as indicated here by these yellow arrows, onto the mobile devices. So again, on the mobile devices, you can make changes to folders and files as needed. That gets saved onto the transporter and almost immediately replicated onto the primary storage. While your users in the primary storage that like to access it via traditional shared drives, they can still access it in that manner. And that's represented on this slide. So the HQ location on the bottom right side of the slide represented with a couple of transporters and then some client desktops. Those client desktops can choose to access the folders and files either with the transporter interface or the traditional shared drive interface. Either way, any of the work they do or changes that they make to folders and files is synchronized in a bidirectional manner with the primary storage and the transporter. Those changes are also automatically and persistently synchronized with the branch office, and the branch office users can make changes to the folders and files, which are automated and persistently synchronized back to the transporter at the HQ. Partners and clients, as I mentioned before, can have access to folders and files as well. Again, our theoretical unlimited number of guest users allows you to invite partners, clients, collaboration entities to work on projects. If they don't have a transporter, that's fine. They still get access to it. If they do, that increases the speed at which they can access the folders and files as they have the benefit of on-prem storage. When the project is finished and completed, and maybe you need to remove them from that organization or that group or that folder, Transporter will remote wipe the data from the authorized devices they've been using it on. This is an example of an interface. It happens to be on an Apple machine, so the Mac OS. You can see on the left it's a traditional Finder window, and there's a transporter icon. Same would be in effect on a Windows interface where you go to Explorer and then there's a transporter folder there. You could click on it and you have access to your folders and files that are represented in a very traditional standard manner. You right mouse click on the folders and files to get access to functions and features that you can normally do, as well as the transporter contextual menu that provides some special features from the transporter standpoint, such as sharing the folder or file, creating a link to a file and sending it out to a partner or somebody in your organization, or looking at the several versions of a file. If you needed to revert back to an older version, we support an unlimited number of versions, limited only by the capacity of the appliance. We can also perform undelete. So if files have been deleted or if a folder has been undeleted, you can undelete that folder or file and bring it back. So it's a very common user interface that your users are very familiar with. We have every public cloud benefit plus the security and confidence that you're in charge of your storage. We provide files you can share like Dropbox. Laptops and mobile devices can access it with just a standard internet connection from anywhere. And we provide access to terabytes of files over the internet. We also provide a public API that allows third-party apps direct access to the transporter. So if you've got a vertically integrated software solution, maybe a home health care nurse that has to travel around from patient to patient and needs to capture some sensitive information on a tablet, when they click save, it saves directly to the transporter, never on that iPad. And if an iPad were to be lost between visits, none of the data is accessible. So you just reissue a new iPad to that worker, and then they're on their way and able to continue the work. The data that they saved, having been saved directly right to the transporter, is already at HQ, and the additional resources are already working on those folders and files and processing the information that was saved at the home health care visit that was conducted. So let's talk a little bit about the technology. So what we've done is taken the concept of Skype and the disruption that they caused in the voice over IP infrastructure of the late 90s, early 2000s, and we applied it to cloud storage. Nobody's ever done it before. So we were actually awarded a patent for this particular type of infrastructure to create a private cloud mesh with peer-to-peer networking between authorized devices. So like Skype, when they first came into the market, the voice over IP competitors at that time were using the traditional telco switches. So even though they wanted to provide the ability for you to speak to people over your computer, those calls were actually being routed up to a big switch in the sky, if you will, at the large telcos, and then rerouted back down to somebody else that you were trying to contact. Then Skype came along and decided, hey, we don't need that big switch in the sky because our customers all have that infrastructure. They can just talk between each other. So it eliminated that big switch in the sky, and then Skype prevailed. And we decided to apply the same technology to storage. So we create the ability for you to use your own infrastructure and create a peer-to-peer network infrastructure between authorized devices, as represented here on this graphic by the black solid arrows. That's where the data transfers. The data goes between authorized devices, whether it be a mobile device or a transporter device. You choose which folders reside where and who has access to them, and the data only flows between those authorized devices in an encrypted peer-to-peer mesh network. Our central service acts as a communications broker. When you want to invite somebody to a folder or file, that invite goes up to our central service and then back down to that user in the form of an email. When they click accept on that email, then that provides an instruction to the authorized devices to create that encrypted key, the encryption key, and just share it between those two authorized devices. So they have that AES 256-bit encrypted tunnel, peer-to-peer networking tunnel between those authorized devices. We never see the keys, we don't generate the keys, and we never see the data, and none of the data is ever held on our central service. Only on the authorized devices, only where you choose the data to reside. So in a service comparison, it's a lot like taking the benefits of traditional on-prem storage, which has high security, higher performance, it's at LAN rate speeds, support enterprise backup, which the public cloud services don't provide, also supports policies and compliance, while at the same time providing all the benefits that Dropbox brings to the table, such as that Dropbox user experience that your users know and love, mobile device access, syncing and access without VPNs, no more cumbersome FTPs. So you bring all that positive and nice new user experience, but combine it with the benefits of on-prem storage, and you get connected data's transporter. Here's an example of our product matrix. Transporters are numbered based on the number of users, expected number of users. So the Transporter 500 could support about 500 users. If you need 1,000 users, you would add 2 Transporter 500s. You can increment and expand in a block-like, grid-like fashion. So you can add another Transporter 500 to get 1,000 users. The enterprise class appliances, as represented by the 2U rack mount servers, or in the case of the 500, the 3U rack mount server. They have SSD metadata acceleration, dual redundant hot swappable power supplies, and they have the network storage connector feature to connect to your primary storage. Then the work group transporters, as represented here by the Transporter 30, are primarily intended to be deployed in a transporter infrastructure already using the enterprise class appliances, but maybe at a remote site that doesn't need to have the network storage connector, but where your users need to have local access to folders and files. They will work independently, but primarily intended to work in conjunction with enterprise class appliances. We do provide a risk-free purchase, allowing you to acquire a transporter and return it within 30 days if it doesn't perform as we state. So we mitigate all the risk in your need to grab a transporter and deploy it in your organization and make sure it works out. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Emily, see if we've got some questions.
Great. Thanks, Russ. We do have quite a few questions, but keep getting your questions in, and we'll get Russ to answer them while we've got them on the line. All right, Russ, our first question is from Benjamin. He asked, for financial institutions, we have numerous legal regulations regarding confidential information. What guarantees can we give our internal auditors to allow us to put this in place?
Great question. There's a couple of items there. For the most part, we fall under the safe harbor agreements of those compliance requirements in a couple of different categories. Number one, our data is encrypted with AES 256-bit encryption, so you can be assured that it's safe in flight. We will have encryption for data at rest here by the end of next month. But also, because it's an on-premise solution, it's in your data center, it's in your location. So there isn't a cloud services, public cloud services certification that's required because it's already locked in lock and key behind your doors in your current data infrastructure. So we're already meeting a lot of those requirements, as well as we present an SMB CIF share so that you can point your standard backup software at the transporter and do a full backup. So we integrate right into your already audited and accepted backup routines. So for a lot of reasons, we integrate right into your already existing processes and procedures in order to meet your current certifications.
Great, thanks. Let's see. Our next question is from Peter. He asks, how do you handle file or record locking?
So we allow the application to perform the record locking. So if two people are accessing an Excel file, it'll come up with that standard message you see in Excel that says somebody else is already in this file. Do you want to access it as read-only? And then once the other person is out of the file, a little message pops up and says, the other user is out of the file. Do you want to enter edit mode? So we rely on the application to provide that kind of interface.
Great. Let's see. Here's a question from Elizabeth. She asks, can the transporter handle large amounts of creative resources, files, images, videos, and be shared among internal and external team members seamlessly?
Yeah, it does really well at that. We have the ability to support large file sizes. A lot of the public cloud storage providers limit the file size or limit the transport size. We don't have any of those limitations. So you get to create your own private mesh network and deploy a transporter at each location that needs local access to folders and files. A lot of times we find our large file format customers that have collaboration deploying a transporter or two at different locations so they get local access to folders and files such as CAD files, graphics files for marketing collaboration, those type of files. So our infrastructure works really well in that environment.
Great. Our next question is from Anthony. He asks, what happens if the link between the primary storage and the transporter gets broken?
Oh yeah, great question. So that can occur, and the great thing about transporter is we've created the world's first file system with no central point of control or no central point of journal or metadata. We can do this active, persistent synchronization between authorized devices on standard internet connections, and by that I mean low bandwidth, high latency. Just the opposite of what you would consider when you're talking about remote site replication. So standard internet connections is all you need, no additional software. And we do that by a feature or a technology that we call the playback engine. Maybe we should think of a better name. But each transporter can operate independently for long periods of time, and then when they find each other over a standard internet connection again, they will play back the changes that have occurred while they were working independently and synchronize those changes with the transporters themselves. So great question. We work really well in that type of environment.
Great. Let's see. Here's another question from Peter. He asks, do you offer NFR units for in-house learning?
We do have NFR units available to our reseller partners. Absolutely.
Great. Let's see. Our next question is regarding current SAN integration. Can this be used to give access to other areas of our network, or are only files held on these drives accessible externally? Sorry.
Yeah, you absolutely can provide access to these folders and files internally and externally, so both. And if you've got a SAN, you need to present the folders and files on the SAN in an SMB CIF share, and then we connect to that SMB CIF share. And then your users get to choose if they want to access it through your traditional manner, if they're on the LAN, or if they want to use the transporter interface to access the same folders and files. And they'll be able to access it both on the LAN or internally as well as externally outside the firewall.
Great. Let's see. Our next question, is there a need to back up a system like this, or do I also keep a backup for us as part of your, I'm sorry, let me start over. Is there a need to back up a system like this, or do you also keep a backup for us as part of your service? Redundancy is awesome, but I'm just curious.
We hold none of your data. We cannot access, view, or see your data. It doesn't pass through our systems at all. So it's completely within your own private infrastructure. So we don't hold any data. The data is only on the transporter where you choose to put it. For redundancy purposes, we recommend that you purchase a transporter that you keep at a remote site. And it's very easy. Its default setting is to replicate your first transporter. So not only do you have DR and a level of HA, but you've got that remote site replication as well on the other transporter. And then you can further connect that to your standard backup routine and keep that from an archive archive standpoint back into your regular backups.
Great. Here's a really good comment from Benjamin. He just says, hot dog, I'm impressed. So nice to hear, Benjamin.
That's great. Hot dog.
Yeah. Let's see. Here is, Peter wants to know what the pricing range is.
Oh, yeah, great question. So the Transporter 500 has an MSRP of the appliance of $64,999. And then on top of that, we have an 18% support and maintenance annual charge, which is, from an 18% standpoint, as a percentage, it's lower than most appliances out there in the market. The Transporter 75 has an MSRP of $9,999, and then 18% support and maintenance annually. So the initial acquisition price for a Transporter 75 is $11,798. So you'll find that we are competitively priced from an MSRP standpoint, well below the discounted prices that you'll find with the public cloud services. But you gain the additional advantages of on-premise infrastructure, the security, privacy, and the control that you need that you don't get with the public cloud services.
Awesome. Thanks, Russ. Let's see. Our next question is from Leanne. She asks, can you access files that are held within a document management system if you have a document management client on your remote device?
Depends on the document management system and how that's accessed. We certainly have done that before. I recommend you get in contact with some of our specialists via the contact information on this slide. Let's talk about it a little bit further. We do have customers that have either an in-house created or a third-party document management access portal in order to find and locate and identify documents and then need to be served up off the transporter. So that can work, but we'd like to talk to you a little bit further and find out which service you're using and how that might work.
Great. Let's see. Our next question is from Justin. He asks, if I have 75 users, but I'm only using 20% of my transporter, do I have to purchase a completely new transporter when I add the 76th user, even though I still have plenty of space?
Yes, in that particular example, when you add the 76th user, you would need an additional transporter. But transporters can be combined in multiple sizes, so you can choose the right size transporter you need for each location. And we find that we get pretty close to the number of users that are required by each organization, and at a lower cost than a lower price point than the public cloud service providers. So we find that the acquisition price of a transporter is usually recovered in a number of months compared to the per month per user fees that the public cloud service providers charge. So it ends up being quite economical, plus you get the advantages of all the control and the security of having an on-prem solution, and certainly absorbs from a cost standpoint any margin that might be there between user counts.
Great. Our next question is from Matt. He asks, how secure is the data transition and what kind of encryption are you using?
So the data in flight or between transporters or authorized devices is encrypted in AES 256-bit encryption. And those keys are held only on the devices, and they are generated on those devices at the inception of the authorized connection between those devices. So we never hold the encryption keys, and we don't generate the encryption keys. The authorized devices encrypt them on their own and maintain the keys. And towards the end of this quarter, we'll have encryption at rest, so that it'll be encrypted on the device as well, again at AES 256-bit encryption.
Great. Let's see. Our next question is, how do I back up the data on the appliance? How do I actually do that?
Great question, because the public cloud service providers don't provide a method to easily back up your data on the cloud. And if for some reason you needed to get the data off the cloud, or for one reason or another, either they go out of business, or you need to access that data quickly, it can take a long time, days, to actually bring that data back down off the cloud. So backup is an incredibly important aspect that we provide the ability for you to do on the transporter. And you do it in one of two ways, actually three. You can add an additional transporter, and they will automatically and persistently replicate each other, even if one's at a remote site. We also present an SMB SIF share so that you can point your backup software at the transporter and back everything up and keep it in your standard audited backup routines. Or you can connect the transporter to your primary storage via our network attached storage connector, and then once the data is on your primary storage, it again flows through your standard backup routines. So we've got a few different options to provide that essential requirement that companies have.
Great. Here's another question from Matt. He asks, how do you interact with Active Directory?
So we have two ways to interact with Active Directory. We have what we call an AD connector, or Active Directory connector, which does a simple import of whatever is in your Active Directory into the transporter to provide access and provisioning. Or you can use an IDP. So we work with OneLogin currently and are expected to announce relationships with other IDPs in the coming weeks so that you can have that synchronization between Active Directory and transporter.
Great. So it looks like we are all out of questions. Thank you so much, Russ. Hopefully everybody was able to learn a bit more. So Russ, do you have any final words for our audience?
Again, I want to thank you for your time. I hope you learned something new, and if you're interested in transporter, please reach out to us and we'll find out how you can take part in our risk-free trial to get transporter in your data center and start working with it today. Contact one of our sales specialists, and they'll be able to walk you through what we call a live look, which gives you an opportunity to log in, see the administration and user aspects of the transporter so you can decide for yourself if it's going to work in your environment. Thanks again for everything, and I'm looking forward to the next time we can chat, and contact us if you need any more information about a transporter.
All right, fantastic. Thank you so much, Russ. I do want to remind everyone that if your question wasn't addressed live, Connected Data will be able to follow up with you. And if you had to step out or miss any part of today's presentation, you will be receiving an email in a few days with a link to view the webinar on demand. Special thanks to Connected Data for creating today's content and sponsoring this great event. Also, thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in today. We hope to see you back soon for another Spiceworks Partner webinar. But until then, stay safe and keep it spicy.